Island One Company looks forward to seeing you at Matt's in March.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Redding.
A new report claims there's currently a shortage of 24,000 truck drivers. Andrew King, Director of Operations for the OOIDA Foundation, joins the show to refute the numbers and the report itself. A couple who share life both on and off the road are telling their story. Steve and Gina Jones are team drivers, and they've got some tips and tricks to keep things running smoothly. From a group of inmates who helped save a trucker whose rig had overturned to a truck stop chain that closed some iconic restaurants, S.J. Munoz, Tyson Fisher, and Ryan Witkowski will tell us who in recent news has been good and who's been bad with some Roses and Razzberries. And finally, the cargo theft problem shows no sign of slowing down anytime soon, and the criminals seem to be evolving, using new methods and targeting different cargo. Landline Magazine's Ryan Witkowski catches up with Danny Ramon of Overhaul for his take. And now, here's Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Mark. A new report from a factoring company caught the attention of the OOIDA Foundation. It claims that a shortage of truck drivers is costing the freight industry billions of dollars. It's a report the foundation has labeled as ludicrous, and here to explain why is Andrew King, the foundation's Director of Operations. Andrew, good to see you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So let's start by summarizing what this report says. It's from Altline. It's a factoring company, and they claim to have used data from Google for Jobs and other online job sites to say that there is currently a shortage of more than 24,000 truck drivers, something Altline says is costing the industry more than $95 million every week. You are well trained by now, Andrew, at knocking down these claims when they pop up, and they always seem to keep popping back up.
They do.
What is wrong with this one? I'll give you a blanket statement or a blanket question there to start.
There's so much. There's nothing right. We'll just say that.
Okay.
Well, so there's a lot of issues with this, and just even how they went about their report, and I'm using air quotes, the report on this. And of course, I want to be kind. You know, I think that's important.
You're a kind person.
I'm kind,
yes.
you know. But anyway, so they go through different job sites like Google Jobs and others looking for truck driving postings. But at the very end of the report, they put in this caveat that we're just assuming that these are heavy tractor trailer driver postings. So this could be, I don't even know what they found. This could be like Amazon delivery truck stuff that they are now projecting to the entire industry. And another thing to keep in mind, 24,000 drivers isn't even a percent. It's not even 0.5% of the driving population. So that just blows my mind right there. That should tell you that this is, you know, not true. And then just this idea that they say it in their first paragraph, that there's freight not being delivered.
Right.
Because there is a shortage of drivers. I mean, if that isn't the most dumb thing you could say,
And explain why that is dumb, right? Because I mean, we've been in a freight recession for a couple years now.
Yes.
And
exactly, and that's the whole reason. We've been in freight recession since basically 2022. So going on 2 years, still waiting for that next upcycle to begin. If you had a shortage of drivers to the point where you literally aren't able to deliver freight, you're going to raise your rates.
Yeah. And we
so
have not seen that.
We have not seen that. You would have a perpetual increase in rates. If there was a true driver shortage, rates would always be going up, always, or at the very minimum, staying consistent. But in the last, well, I don't know, forever, you have this constant cycle of up and down, up and down, up and down. And sometimes it lasts 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. Sometimes it's just a year, but it's a continual change. If there really was a driver shortage, that would never, ever happen.
Yeah, there is a overcapacity issue right now, which again factors into all that we're talking about here. With these reports, and these reports do come out every now and then, and they do gain attention. And we've heard lawmakers, even from Capitol Hill, kind of cite these reports and talk about the truck driver shortage. And we've talked about this before with you, Andrew, plenty of times. Again, this is not a new thing necessarily, but it keeps popping up. And I've asked you this before, and I want to ask you again because I think it's important to look at this in the context of, what does it matter? Does this actually matter? Obviously, you take issue with the report and the information that's coming out. I think what's done with that information and what's done with those numbers is kind of where we venture into harmful territory, I suppose.
Exactly.
With that. And can you talk about that?
Yes. And again, to be kind, following Christ, we got to be kind. But
Right.
the idea behind this is to make policies like lowering the driver age, which we see as something that's incredibly unsafe. That is, they're using a driver shortage narrative to push bad policies. I mean, if you look at ATA and you look at all of the policies that they introduce, they're really based on this notion of a driver shortage. It is the foundation of all of their arguments on things that owner-operators and truck drivers who are actually on the road would find very harmful or negatively impacting their daily life. And it's founded on this single idea of a driver shortage, which is just crazy that anyone has ever believed this. I mean, take, for example, I have a quote here from Bob Costello, who's the chief economist of ATA. And he says, and this was given in 2024, talking about 2023, he basically says that rates and demand are down while costs are up. And that's the reason for the freight recession. And he ends it by saying, this has been driven by an imbalance in the supply of capacity versus demand because there is far more equipment than there is cargo to carry. If you have so much equipment that you don't have enough freight to move, then you don't have a driver shortage. And then he goes on to say in that same report that they have to dismiss 90% of their applications out of hand. That he even says that we have a surplus of people who are applying for driving positions.
Right.
I mean, hello, what?
There's a cognitive dissonance. And I will say that too with this report in particular. Consider the source when you see these things. This is from a factoring company. As you talked about, the methodology may not be what you would like to see or other people would like to see there too. And when ATA talks about things, obviously they are coming from a different perspective as well. So you got to consider the source with all these things as well.
Yes, that's always important. What is the purpose behind it? What's driving it?
Yeah.
It kind of thinking a little bit deeper. And as we've talked about before, and again, just to emphasize, there cannot be a continual driver shortage. You look at the economics of trucking. When demand goes up, carriers will raise their rates in order to attract more drivers, which is why we have turnover. Turnover will increase during those periods of time. And then employment rises. And then when demand falls, the reverse happens. There's no shortage of drivers. There's a turnover problem.
We'll leave it there. We don't want to assign motive, but again, consider the source. Andrew King, we appreciate you being the source for all of this, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you.
Our thanks to Andrew King for his time. Mark, back to you.
Thanks, Scott. Congratulations to Matthew Asbridge of Maywood, Missouri. He's received the OOIDA Safe Driving Award for 10 years of safe, accident-free driving. That's the equivalent of a car driver going 75 years without causing a single accident. The OOIDA Safe Driving Award program is sponsored by Shell Rotella. And if you're interested in receiving the Safe Driving Award, you can find a link to more information at our website, landlinenow.com. Next, a couple offers some tips for keeping things running smoothly. S.J. Munoz, Tyson Fisher, and Ryan Wachowski offer up some Roses and Razzberries, and we'll hear how cargo thieves are evolving from Danny Ramon of Overhaul. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Capital Reman, the leader in remanufactured diesel engines and components, has partnered with OOIDA to offer exclusive member benefits. Visit capitalreman.com today to support America's transportation industry and take advantage of your benefits.
Running on ultra-low sulfur diesel? Stay protected this winter with Howe's Diesel Treat and Diesel Lifeline. Steer clear of gel and ice with North America's #1 trusted brand. Find Howe's products nationwide at select retailers, auto parts stores, truck stops, and on Amazon.com.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
Landline Now, welcome back. I recently spoke with a couple who team drive together and have learned many lessons along the way. Thank you for joining me, and of course, happy Valentine's Day. I'm curious, what came first? Were you guys both truck drivers before you met, or did you get into trucking after you met?
Definitely after. So when I left the military, I came down here to Phoenix to go to school to be a motorcycle mechanic. Trucking was never on my mind, and that was in 2007. And while I was down here, I had a part-time job at a motorcycle dealership, and as I was doing a part-time job there, I saw Gina at the store. She was sitting outside on a bench, waiting for her bike to get worked on. And it turned out, we started talking, and after she left, it turned out that her brother was a salesman there that I knew. And then once we started talking, he became a salesman of Gina to me. And my original intent was to go back home to Colorado after I got done with the school, but I met Gina, and that kind of threw all my plans out the window. And staying here with the school here, there's an excess amount of motorcycle mechanics, so they weren't paying what I needed because I wasn't fresh out of high school. And so I was looking around, and we're driving along the interstate, and I saw all these trucks on the road, and like, well, I can look into that. There's a butt getting paid in each one of those trucks. That's what I said. That's probably not the best way to put it, but there's a driver in each one of those trucks that's getting paid. And I went and looked into it, and that's how I started with the trucking industry. And so neither one of us have any history with the trucking background.
So he asked me to join him on the truck, and it was a little bit of a while. He kept asking me, and we were waiting for my youngest son to leave for the Army because I was having empty nester. And by the way, we met 17 years ago at the Harley dealership. How it all began. I rode my own motorcycle, and like he said, he was working there. But this is my second career. I started at the age of 50. And I worked 28 years in retail. So when you have worked so long in a career in the grocery business, when you've worked so long in a career, and I worked with a family-owned grocery store, and I loved it. And it was hard to leave. I'm like, how am I going to choose from being over the road, all 48 states compared to being home? And I am very social, so it was going to take a lot of my fun time away. But Steve was lonely over the road, and that's kind of how it began with our company that we did choose to work for, because we did shop around. And it's been 13 years, and it's been going great ever since.
So how long was it when you met to when you started team driving?
Probably three years. So we met in March of 2008. And I started driving in September of 2009, and then Gina
12
came on to Warner April of
February 2012. I started school, and then February 25th, 2012, I connected with Steve as him being my leader. Jumped on the truck.
So 4 years.
Wow.
From meeting to teaming?
Yeah, because I had to wait for my youngest son to leave for the Army before I could do anything. So that took the time of him leaving, with me getting teary-eyed and having that separation. So yeah, and like Steve said, we haven't looked back.
Another reason why I kept bugging her to team with me is because I was finding out that she was taking both the bikes out to go to work and go ride around. So she was getting more miles on my bike than I was. So we got to put an end to this. I got to get her on the truck.
So what was that like, kind of going from, being together, like what a normal couple or regular couple would be to then, I mean, being in the truck 24/7, working together, living together, sharing a small space. What's that like?
Well, you learn to respect each other's privacy. I always made a point when she closes the curtain, when she's in the back and I'm driving, I make sure I do everything I can to make sure that curtain stays closed. I very rarely go back and, I hate to say, but invade her space while she's sleeping or relaxing. Now, if I come to the end of my shift, it's a short shift because of how the load's working out, and I want to go lay down, yeah, I'll go back there and I'll lay down, but I won't. I try not to go back there and use the microwave, or I try not to. I make sure I have everything I need up front before I start my shift to have all my food, because we have the fridge in the back, plus we keep a cooler between the seats for beverages, and we make our own food, so we're not eating on the road very often. And so I'll have my meal in the fridge with me, in the cooler between the seats. And I'll make sure, like right now it's winter, so I have my winter coat sitting on the passenger seat. So I just make sure I don't invade her space.
So when we first started driving together, I had to kind of get used to the space of the truck being so small, and just with what I wanted to bring on the truck, I couldn't. So I learned you don't need much in life. You really look at life different on how you live, that we have so much chaos. And when you're on the truck, it's more my relaxed time. When I'm home, on our off time, I'm like rushing to get everything done. But like Steve said, we do prepare our meals before we go out, and we are in our healthy stage of mind right now, healthy living. We want to be good truck drivers for truck drivers out there. And we are training for a 50-mile march with Warner Enterprise. So in August. So we are in training now, and we do everything together. But the space, yes, I need more space and more time for myself than Steve does. I always say, don't you get tired of me? And he's like, no. But you know what? I do at times. So I do need a little more space. But you know what? We respect each other, and we have our wishes that we likes and don't likes. And we just tell each other, we communicate. And that's very important.
And also, I'd also equate our relationship work-wise to a family that works different shifts. Yes, we're physically close to each other all the time, but I can equate it more to you get to spend maybe half an hour or so between shifts together, and then you're mentally apart because she'll be out back there sleeping, I'll be up front driving, or vice versa. So it's more equivalent to someone that's a couple that's working on different shifts. So we're not always together where we're in each other's space all the time.
And for some reason, if he leaves that curtain open, I'm just like, thinking that he's awake. So with the curtain closed, makes it where I'm not,
Yeah.
Well, to go back on that, my first truck that I ever had, the curtain didn't close. It didn't work. It was, one side was missing. So I got real used to just not even bothering with it. So even 12 years with Werner, I still have a habit of just not even, the light doesn't stop me from sleeping, because I usually cover the overnight shift and Gina does the day. So I'm sleeping during the day, and I can sleep whether it's bright or dark. So it doesn't affect my sleep at all, but she'll think I'm awake and she's just start talking while I'm laying down in the back. And
yeah.
So,
and when I start work, that front of the cab is my office. I want that time to myself so I can concentrate on my driving and be safe at all times of who's around me to keep us safe together. So, that's really important to me. And then when I'm done driving, I'm telling you, I get to the back.
Now, of course,
done for the day.
Yeah, I don't blame you there. Valentine's Day, and a special day for you, your birthday. Talk to me about, how do you celebrate these kinds of holidays, I'll say, in the truck when you're together?
Well, it starts at midnight. So as soon as midnight hits and I'm driving, I just start singing at the top of my lungs, happy birthday. And then either she'll say, thank you, I love you, or shut up, I'm trying to sleep.
And happy Valentine's Day.
And happy Valentine's. So that's how it starts. And then like the night before, I'll also leave her cards and whatever gift I bring along, and put that on the bed for her. So when she goes back, she gets those. We always try to make time for, if we're on the road and we're not going to get home, we make sure we stop for a meal, at least a decent place, if we can. We just try to carve out a few hours. Of course, it always depends on loads, but we just do what we can to make sure that we appreciate it, show each other that we appreciate each other.
And what I do for him, I'm crafty, so I like to make cards, and I like to make crafted items where I can put like little treats and stuff inside. And again, I put it under his pillow or his blanket where he can find it later on, after like I'm done driving and where he goes to bed. So it makes it fun, and you have to keep life going as a fun for us, because it can get boring quite easy being together all the time and not having that more excitement and getting out there, because you don't always I don't want to always hear about work, even on our off time. So, having different conversation is great.
And so when I was in the military, I learned really quick that you can move holidays. It's all on how you individually want to celebrate. So if we happen to be on the road, I make sure that I have a reservation at our favorite special occasion restaurant for the next time that we're going to be home.
And a movie. We'll go to a movie. If we are on the road and we want time to ourselves to get out of the truck, we may be somewhere in Florida and we say, hey, let's take a couple days. Let's get a hotel. Let's go on the beach. We'll just contact work, our fleet manager, and say, hey, is it okay that we can take a couple days off in Florida on our off time? Because our company allows us to go anywhere in the 48th state when we want to take time off or visit family. So we really enjoy that and make sure we do that for ourselves.
That's awesome. What other advice would you have for couples who do drive together, even couples who don't drive together that might be watching or listening to this, to really just, like you said, like respecting each other's time, and just what advice would you have for them?
Just make sure you take the time to, as Gina said, to make things other than work a priority. Do the date nights when you can. Make sure your partner knows that you appreciate them. Not just because they're driving the truck and keeping you safe while they're driving. It's got to be something other than work.
To me,
because otherwise you end up just being quote unquote teammates, not in a teammate as in a relationship, but you end up being a work teammate and you just happen to live with them.
You don't want to be roommates. Yeah. So to me, communication is so important. When things are bothering you, you should be able to tell what's bothering you and not let it extend where it might get blown up later on. They might not like what you have to say if it's something that is bothering you, but they can accept it. And Steve tries to accept how I feel as well. So I like that. And it's respect and also patience. Having patience is so important, and not letting both your egos get in the way, because once that happens, it won't work. If you're arguing about something, or they want you to drive a certain way, or I want him to drive a certain way, or whatever. So, let your independence be that to each other.
That was Steve and Gina Jones talking about their life on the road. For Landline Now, I'm Ashley Blackford. Stay tuned for more after this.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
At Truck Stop, we built a better load board for carriers like you. Sign up today and access over 600,000 loads on the most trusted online load board. Learn why the best in the business rely on Truck Stop to make more money and start driving your profit today.
Landline Now, welcome back. Has your senator or congressman made you happy lately? Did the truck stop make you kind of sad? When they do either one, here at Landline, we have a special way of responding.
Ew.
We call it Roses and Razzberries. Staff writer S.J. Munoz keeps track of such things for Landline Magazine and for our program. S.J. is here now with the good, the bad, and the ugly from recent news.
We're back with the latest edition of Roses and Razzberries. S.J. Munoz, Ryan Witkowski, Tyson Fisher, and winter is upon us, gentlemen. I mean, I guess some other people may be not feeling the burn here, but it feels like across the country it's pretty nasty out there.
We're actually getting a proper winter this year.
I mean, if you want to look at it that way, yeah.
Sure. I'm that guy in the summer that I'm like, I hate the heat. I'd rather be cold. And then this time of year rolls around and I got to like stick it out and like stand by my guns. Yeah. It sucks right now. It is cold as hell.
Yeah, I'm kind of the opposite. I feel that, I'm like, give me that heat anytime. I can always cool down. It's hard to warm up. At least that's the way I look at it. But again, at the top, we just want to remind you, if you have an idea for a rose or a raspberry, hey, maybe it's a combination of the two. Send those to roses@landlinemag.com. Let's go ahead and get started. We have roses here to get going here, and maybe from an unexpected source.
Sure, yeah. Roses to a group of inmates who helped a trucker whose truck rolled over. So this incident happened on US 60 in Davis County, Kentucky. So apparently a tractor trailer lost control, jackknifed, and overturned on the highway, nearly striking inmates filling potholes for the Davis County Detention Center work crew.
They had them on a chain gang. That's nice.
Pretty much, right? So the inmates saw what happened, tried to get the trucker out, but the door would not open. Meanwhile, the truck is literally on fire. So they had to go grab fire extinguishers. So while some inmates were putting out the fire, others were busting out the window to get the driver out. Eventually, the driver got out, and I think he only suffered minor injuries. But the county jailer, he's going to ask the State Department of Corrections to grant awards to the work crew who are, state inmates, which I think, at least an award. Maybe shave off a couple of weeks or months.
Depending upon the circumstances, maybe throw them a bone there.
See how that clears through prison contraband, but that's fine. Nothing sharp, I'm assuming.
But one reason I wanted to highlight this story is not just because of, the saving the trucker and all that, but this is also fitting because the trucking industry has welcomed people with a criminal past to restart their life by becoming a truck driver. That's been a thing that the industry has been doing since forever, really. And in fact, the American Transportation Research Institute is currently seeking carriers to participate in a new survey looking into hiring practice for truck drivers with prior criminal convictions. That's a thing that's happening right now. So, I just think I'm of the opinion that if you've paid your debt to society, you deserve a second chance. And there's too many industries that automatically turn down former convicts. And then we wonder why recidivism rates are so high. So, but, trucking, I think it's a good career for them. I mean, you certainly stay busy. You have the potential to earn good money. And then perhaps, you have time to, reflect with all that time by yourself on the open highway. So anyway, kudos to those inmates. And hopefully when they get out, they'll be like, hey, maybe I can be a truck driver.
Yeah, and you've seen plenty of those programs, too, that states have started up where it's funding for, former inmates who could go forward and get their CDL and actually move on. And you're right, Tyson, so many of those programs have boasted such a high rate of recidivism that basically that keeps you from re-offending and going back into prison. And you're 100% right, man. Once you've paid your debt, I believe in restitution and I believe in, reformation. And so, once those guys have paid their debt, let's move on. And you're right. This is an awesome opportunity for them to be able to do that. And it's cool to kind of see that working in the other way, the other direction now.
Well, now you would think someone that's kind of, risking their safety and welfare in this situation is someone that does want to turn around. So why not give them a chance there and go ahead and do that? If they were to do that and get on the road, unfortunately, there's going to be a couple less offerings available to drivers these days. And Ryan, you got fill us in on this one?
Yeah, I'm passing out some raspberries to Travel Centers of America for killing two iconic trucker destinations. They are Our Place in Morris, Illinois, and Johnson's Corner in Johnstown, Colorado. Both of those iconic trucker destinations located right near truck stops were bought up by TA years ago. They were operated under the same name, but they were still owned by TA. Well, now they've decided to replace both of those with Black Bear Diners. Now, Johnson Corner, They had a 4-pound cinnamon roll you could buy there, and our place had a 4-pound burger challenge. Both of those, which I believe are real losses to the culture of trucking. But TA currently operates 10 of the bear-themed restaurants in Arizona, California, Kansas, New Mexico, and Texas. But I just, at this point, like, you're losing out on a lot of the great things that truck drivers had. And we hear all the time about how there's no food options at truck stops, how they always have just chains and things like that. The few last standing, mom and pop type operations, although they were owned by Travel Centers of America, they still operated under that same kind of pretense, right? That mom and pop kind of business model. And I think you're just losing out on that. So now I'm starting to wonder what else they're willing to offer up and sacrifice to the Black Bear Diner gods. And look, to be fair, like I looked it up, Black Bear Diner seems like they're ran by decent folks. They have 162 locations in 14 states. They support local charities in their community, and their pancakes are pretty delicious. But still, like...
Do they have a 4-pound pancake? Though?
I don't think they have a 4-pound pancake.
Well, that's what I wanted to know here in your research here. What is the 4-pound deal? Is that just a coincidence?
I don't know if that's like the breaking point that they realize like 4 pounds is too much for a human being to consume, because a 4-pound burger seems outrageous, and I would assume that that's mostly bun as well. But that 4-pound cinnamon roll, I feel like was something I wanted to try, and now I'll never be able to, thanks to Travel Centers of America.
That's a pretty famous place, a cinnamon roll place. Like, I've never been there before, but I've heard about it over the years.
Oh, yeah, you could like order them and have them shipped to your house and everything.
Oh, man, I didn't even know
I'll
about
have to do that. We got time still?
Yeah. Nope, it's too late now. No. Sorry, I'm going to have to make my own 4-pound cinnamon roll.
Yeah, well, we kind of we understand, the business side of things, but it is unfortunate that hopefully, we don't see much more of this going forward.
No,
but
there's no logical reason to get rid of the 4-pound cinnamon roll.
We're kind of on the same page there, I think. And, on the negative side, you have some raspberries to hand out as well, Tyson.
Oh, yeah. So raspberries to Buffalo Tractor Trailer Institute in Salamanca, New York, for basically screwing over aspiring truck drivers. So what happened was at least one 21-year-old who enrolled in the CDL school, he enrolled in the school in December. He was there for only 2 weeks before things went south. So in that short time he was there, he spent very little time actually driving a truck. He said that most of the time was spent just doing maneuvers in the yard. So not actually out on the road doing much of anything, right? It's kind of like when you teach like a 14-year-old how to parallel park at the school parking lot, A lot of that.
That's kind of how my son approaches mowing the backyard. He's just really doing maneuvers in the yard. That's really it.
So the man said that there were days where he was at the school for about just an hour before he left because there was nothing to do. He would just show up and the school's not doing anything. So
not exactly running a tight ship there.
No. So on January 26th, he received a group text message informing him that Buffalo Tractor Trailer Institute had shut down. Now, he was reimbursed $1,600. However, he had spent $4,200 on the classes as a whole. So
a little short there, yeah.
A little short, right. So, but even worse than that is none of his coursework was documented in the CDL driver training system. So none of the hours that he had put in, which according to him was minimal, but regardless, those hours will not transfer to another CDL school, which is that is a thing that's supposed to be a thing, but in this case is not. So I don't know. It's just, it really does highlight the issues we have with driver training. I know OOIDA has taken issues with a lot of the driver training requirements that we have, or the lack thereof, I think is the big one is here. So not only is the bar to get a CDL too low, but the bar to be a CDL trainer is also too low, as is highlighted here with this particular CDL school.
I mean, there's plenty of places that are good schools.
Sure.
But it seems like there are also way too many, and you're right about this. It speaks to the entry-level requirements in the industry. There are just way too many that are skirting the rules and trying to get around things. And I know 3 years ago when I started at Landline, one of the first stories that I covered was the implementation of the entry-level driver training regulations. And I spoke to some of those CDL mills type schools, and there were a few that were like, I'm just going to close up shop because I don't want to have to do this paperwork.
Right.
And so, like, it just lets you know how lazy some of these folks are that are just trying to turn and burn and put somebody behind the wheel.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously, that the training kind of is, that's it right there. That's the big problem with it. Like you said, Tyson, the lack thereof. But in this situation, even more so, people kind of trying to get over on, these guys that we talked about previously, giving someone a second chance and trying to do something different with their life. And this maybe wasn't a second chance, but obviously the student was committed to becoming a trucker, paying over $4,000, doing everything he could do. Yep. And then instead of helping him and, being up front, you're just going to steal his money and say, sorry, buddy, you're on your own now.
They gave him less than half
exactly.
back, too.
Even
I hope that man gets his money.
And you would think, I haven't heard of this school, and I know there's schools everywhere in these training facilities, but you can imagine he probably wasn't the only one, out this amount of money. So that makes it even worse when we probably see more of this down the line. Some more people do some raspberries here. Ryan, you got the next one?
Yeah, some raspberries to these egg thieves in Pennsylvania, in case you hadn't heard or seen the story, which was apparently all over national media. 100,000 eggs valued at $40K were stolen out of an organic grocery store in Pennsylvania. The first thing I noted is that it gave journalists a reason to break out every egg pun. No pun intended with break out.
Yeah, they do it
break
right
out
there,
all the egg puns. They're scrambbling to find this. It left them shell shocked. All of these things.
Crack the case, maybe.
Oh, yeah, you got to crack the case. I spoke to Overhaul this week about emerging targets following market trends. As we all know, the price of eggs is exceptionally high right now. Obviously, eggs aren't going to become a long-term target, but it does speak to the fact that you need to be aware of what commodities may be more valuable than you think. And a little bit of that playing into fact, too, are the tariffs that are going into place, driving up the costs of a lot of other consumer goods. And so it's going to be wise over the next few months to really pay attention to what is hot in the market, what's driving up prices, because as we see, even a perishable item like eggs, as long as cargo thieves know that they can turn and burn and make a profit off of it, they're going to find a seller and they're going to get those things out the door. Speaking of cargo theft, though, and this is another thing I got from Overhaul, some extra raspberries to folks who are apparently now jumping onto moving semis to steal stuff as well. They had sent out an insider bulletin on both the East and West Coast that they are seeing cargo thieves now tailing semis, and then when they pull into at a stoplight or anything like that, they'll jump aboard the trailer, they'll pop the lock, they'll get inside, and then they'll wait until the truck comes to another stop, jump out, throw some bags of cargo, the cost-dense items, and then they'll just move on with their life. Most of the time, these drivers had no idea that this happened.
That's crazy.
It is reminiscent, though, of something in Europe, a theft technique they call the Roman gymnast, or a Romanian gymnast, sorry. This one, thieves climb on the hood of a moving car and then jump onto the moving semi, which seems incredibly dangerous. It's some Ocean's 11 stuff, and I honestly would just love to see it happen in action. It turns out the first crew to do this was actually a crew of former Romanian gymnasts. That's why they call it the Romanian gymnast technique. That's at least to Danny at Overhaul. So it's like some sort of comic book villains that used to be gymnasts, and now they're like, well, we're out of work. What are we going to do? I guess we're going to become cargo
I just
thieves.
admire the commitment.
It really is. I'm assuming they also have leotards on when they're doing this.
Yeah, well, we kind of think it's like a humorous thing or see some whatever, but obviously the thieves are paying attention to the markets and things of that sort, and it's more of a advanced operation than we'd like to see. So
I want to see people doing backflips and stuff out of a moving semi. That's going to be awesome.
Well, I guess that's a good place to end it there. So we want to thank you for joining us for this edition of Roses and Razzberries. For Tyson Fisher and Ryan Witkowski, I'm SG Munoz. Landline Now will be back after this commercial break.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com, because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Welcome back to Landline Now. You, of course, are familiar with the spike in cargo theft incidents in recent years, the problem showing no sign of slowing down anytime soon. And to make matters worse, the criminals seem to be evolving. using new methods to get their hands on new types of cargo they hadn't targeted before. Case in point, a recent heist of eggs in Pennsylvania. Landline Magazine's Ryan Witkowski caught up with Danny Ramon of Overhaul for his take on that incident, plus a new warning about thieves who are stealing from moving tractor trailers.
Well, joining us today is Danny Ramon. He is the head of intelligence and response with Overhaul, and a recent well-publicized egg theft in Pennsylvania has us talking to Danny today. 100,000 eggs valued at right around $40,000 was the heist, and it really put two things into the spotlight for me, Danny. First, it was just how eager journalists are to use puns. Like, I think I saw every egg pun you can imagine under the sun used.
For sure. They love to be clever whenever they get the opportunity, right? I would.
Right. The other thing I think it showed off, though, was just how adept cargo thieves are at just responding to the market. And that's something that you guys had pointed out as well. I mean, obviously, egg prices have been all the buzz across the country. And then suddenly we have somebody lifting 100,000 of them.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I'm always telling people that these criminal organizations are agile, right? They're not making decisions by committee or by board. You know, they don't have to wait a couple of weeks to get their, quarterly directives or whatever it may be. They see an opportunity, they're going to go get it, right? And with things like eggs and a lot of things that are not uniquely serialized, it makes it easier to liquidate for these thieves. These things are harder to be tracked by the shippers, by the original owners of this cargo. It's harder to prove that this egg is the same egg that was stolen. They don't have unique barcodes on them or anything like that. Coupled with the fact that criminals are getting more sophisticated at liquidating their stolen goods. They're getting to the point where, the new model is now criminal to consumer, which reaps them a much higher profit margin than it used to when they would have to go through an intermediary fence operative, right? And when they do that, when they increase the amount of money that they can get for any given load, it also lowers the bar for what becomes an attractive and profitable load for them to steal. So now, yeah, eggs are in demand and are having a price spike and have a lot of other reasons why they might be desirable. But all of a sudden, we're seeing a whole bunch of other things, especially within the food and drinks category, become targeted, again, because the bar has been lowered for what is a profitable load for these criminals to steal, what's worth their time. As a matter of fact, we just had another story come out over the weekend regarding food and drinks thefts. Something, let me see here, over $1 million worth of olive oil stolen in Canada, man. I mean, again, that's something you can't serialize, right? You can't put a unique barcode on a bottle. I mean, you could on a bottle of olive oil, but it sounds like it was being transported in bulk. So, but fictitious pickup, right? They're doing strategic theft for olive oil in Canada now.
Well, another thing that, as we talk about, like some of the prices that might be affecting those targeted loads, I mean, tariffs are expected to impact the price of a lot of goods. Are those types of cargo going to be seeing that same type of targeting in the coming year?
I mean, very likely, right? Because these thieves are looking for anything that they're going to turn around for the biggest amount of delta, the biggest amount of profit margin that they can get. Now we've seen, speaking of turning on a dime, let's bring up the issue of tariffs, right? Tariffs we've seen in just the last couple of weeks have done so many 180s that we're not even sure where it stands right now, right? That's a bit of an exaggeration. Obviously, we can go and check and see exactly where it stands, but we don't know if a tariff is going to be declared or implemented. How long that's going to stand, how long lasting of an impact that may have. But the bottom line is anything that affects the consumer price for something is going to affect the attractiveness to a thief.
We're talking with Danny Ramon. He is the head of intelligence response at Overhaul, and talking cargo theft. And obviously, those eggs, they're a perishable item, and we talk about it a lot. Them having to have a buyer lined up for it, obviously. And I forget the terminology you use to do it, but it really is cargo theft by order, really. Like they're saying, hey, we already have somebody to spin this. I guess from a driver and a business owner standpoint, when you're hauling perishable items, how can you kind of stay ahead of that curve?
I mean, the entire supply chain has to be aware of what's going on and has to have at least a certain level of security installed into their supply chain, because everything is at one point going to become a target. If you haven't been a target yet, you're going to become a target. As these criminal networks increase in sophistication, they're figuring out, just like any corporation would, they're figuring out how to eke out more profit margin from the same thing that they're already doing, right? So lower and lower thresholds become potential targets for them, and it's just really tough. So the same thing that I recommend for almost any, electronics shipper or pharmaceutical shipper, at least some of those steps need to be taken by your basic shippers of food and drinks and lower value, or what they might consider lower target items, need to be aware of what's going on as well. And the first thing that anybody should do is plug themselves into the industry, start attending trade shows, start attending some of these conferences, follow the key players on LinkedIn. We're always releasing open source intelligence that gives you situational awareness of what's going on in the supply chain right now. But again, just as with those electronics shippers and pharmaceutical shippers, there is no silver bullet that's just going to cure everything all at once.
Well, and one thing you had alluded to is also providing some of that open source insider information. One of those insider alerts that I recently saw was talking about cargo thieves now jumping on trailers at stoplights. Cost dense items are obviously hopping on and stealing those. But tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's a slight. I don't want to say it's necessarily connected, but we've seen in Europe some more daring types or variants of that theft, where folks will actually hop onto the hood of a moving car behind a tractor trailer, pop open the doors of that tractor trailer while it's driving down the highway, and jump from the hood of the car behind it into the trailer and start passing merchandise back into that follow car. Now, that's not what we're seeing here in the U.S., but what we're seeing is that these folks are hopping on, at a stoplight or at a stop sign, wherever they have a chance. Usually it's a crew of people that are identifying this load at origin, and they're going to try and hop on before it gets onto the highway, or they might stage themselves at a truck stop. And if that driver makes a brief stop at a truck stop, they'll enter the trailer there. They know a lot of the folks who are carrying these cost-dense items are not going to stop for very long, especially if they have team drivers. This is an industry standard practice. You hire team drivers so that it can stop for as few times and for as little a little amount of time as possible, right? These folks know that they're not going to have the amount of time that they need to perform a full theft. So they're just going to pop the seal on the trailer doors, get inside the trailer. Then they'll be able to look through, maybe it's an LTL load, it's not all the same product on there. They'll be able to look through all the pallets, cherry pick exactly what they want. And then they'll make a call to their friend who's in the chase vehicle, letting them know, hey, okay, we're ready to get out. And then he'll pull up, and the next time that vehicle stops, they'll jump out and they'll get back into that follow vehicle. Now, what's really interesting and what's happened is the reason that we found out about this is that in a couple of these instances, there's not been a safe opportunity for them to exit, right? So they've had to manufacture that opportunity for them to exit the tractor trailer. And they'll usually do that by having an accomplice pull in front of the tractor trailer and either extremely slow down to the point where they can pop out safely, or actually slam on the brakes to the point where it forces the tractor trailer to stop. All it takes is 5 seconds for these guys to get out of the tractor trailer. And then, of course, it might not be until the shipment arrives at delivery that they open the trailer doors and notice, like, hey, this whole trailer's been rummaged through, 2 or 3 pallets are missing, whatever it may be. It's pretty daring, but again, it just goes to show the effort that these guys are willing to go through. Everyone says, like, well, I did this, I took this one step. I wouldn't figure that they were going to be willing to go past that. And it's no longer about not being the low-hanging fruit. If you have desirable cargo, these thieves are going to go through hell to try and get it.
Yeah, it does. It just feels like they're putting in an awful lot of work to make a dishonest living.
Yeah. We talk about it all the times when we're on these recovery calls. Like, man, if these guys would put half the amount of effort that they put into this into legitimate enterprise.
Yeah, sky's the limit for them, man.
Yeah.
Well, he's Danny Ramon. He's the head of intelligence and response with Overhaul, and always a great time talking to you about cargo theft.
Always a great time talking to you, Ryan. Thanks for having me again.
Our thanks once again to Danny Ramon of Overhaul for his time, and to Ryan Witkowski for sharing his talk with us. And our thanks to you as well for joining us today here on Landline Now. Wherever you are, whatever you may be doing, thanks for keeping this country moving. And until next time, drive safe and take care.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife,
I'm a writer,
photographer,
I farm,
I'm a veteran,
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
chrome,
and I am
a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us! Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.